7th century. Whether or not they were made up or not, I don't know. It's speculation about the names, but it does talk about the countries they would be from.
What were they again? Caspers?
Balthazar, Balthasar, and I have this. I just need to get down to that things to ponder slide. I don't want to mess it up again. Do you see that one on there? Which one?
The arrow, is it up and down or
Sideways. Not working. If you can manipulate it from back there, that'd be fine. There you go. Keep going. Things to Ponder is the title of the slide. There you go. So Balthazar, Melchior from Persia, and Gaspar or Caspar. Some say that he may have been from India. So the Zoroastrian religion was both in Persia or Iran, and a group of them moved to India, and they were from over there as well. They traveled from the east. So the most habitable place was west of Lodebar, where Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son, King Saul's son, was exiled there, self-exiled, because he didn't want to be murdered. That was common among the time. When a new king came to power, he killed all the previous kings to eliminate any insurgency or anything against his rule. So Lodebar means no pasture. In other words, you were barely able to survive there. It was on the edge of the wilderness, the desert. So it wouldn't have been from anywhere in Israel, just a little bit east. It would have been the other side of the desert, which is Persia or Babylon. The story of Mephibosheth is a wonderful story in itself. And I've studied that for a long time and even wrote a song about it one time. But it's a wonderful story if you haven't delved into that story. David and Jonathan had a blood covenant relationship. And he asked, is there anyone left of the house of Saul that I can show kindness to? And it was Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth. So it was beyond Lodebar that these kings were from, because there's a desert to the east there. They likely followed the trade routes via the Fertile Crescent, which is up around Haran, where Abram traveled to get to the Promised Land, because he didn't want to cross the desert. Interesting fact, if I can get that up any. The bottom bullet says, when the Persians were usurping and invading in 614 AD, they came to the Church of the Nativity and they left it intact rather than destroy all the other religious symbols and places that they came to, because they knew that that was something special, because the wise men had been there previously. And of course, the convergence is confirmed in 7 BC of Jupiter and Saturn, and that's what it looked like a couple years ago when it happened, of course, and that may have been part of the explanation for the star. A definite sign there was a convergence of Jupiter and Saturn. The pre-incarnate Christ also, I believe, guided them, because, when they saw after they visited Herod, he said, go search for them and find them. And the star reappeared, and it led them to the house where he was. So let's see if I can make this work. Yes. So if the wise men were in Babylon at the time of Daniel, and Daniel was the head of that society at the time, he was considered the leader, and they respected him. And he wrote about this prophecy, when Messiah would show up. They undoubtedly heard about that. Now, I don't know if you can read that or not, but 70 weeks, or 490 years. The weeks were weeks of years. So the word to restore Jerusalem, 455 BC. And then Jerusalem was rebuilt by 406. And then 62 weeks after that time, a Messiah would arise, and then he would be cut off. So they knew the time frame if they knew Daniel's prophecy. And since they were students, they were researchers, they had doctorates. It would be like us having equivalent to a doctorate in astronomy, astrology, science, and so many other areas, because they were advisors to the king. And when the king had questions, they had to give him guidance so he could make decisions. So,
Bill,
yes.
why would they have thought the word week would be a year?
Why?
Yeah, what was that common back then?
7, they were talking in prophetic terms, and that's just how it works out. The 490 years is a reoccurrent thing in Scripture, time-wise. And I mean, if you look into that 490 period of time, you'll see that significant things happened every 490 years, and this was one of them. So it speaks of 7, not days, literally, but 7 periods of years, 7 years being a week. Okay, now just to authenticate, this is Daniel's tomb in Susa in Iran. And so Daniel, this is history. This is not just something that is coming out of somebody's head or out of the Bible. But they lived this, and they entombed him there and built that mosque over him. And I've heard that ISIS destroyed that, but I'm not certain of that. I know they destroyed other historic sites. You heard that in the news over the last 2-3 years. Jonah's tomb was one of them that they destroyed as well.
Bill,
Yes.
they built a mosque over top of his tomb. Is that kind of like a thumb in the eye for them?
Just their way of enshrining, I guess.
But one's the Jewish faith and one's the Islamic faith.
Yeah. Well, Daniel was held as a prophet to the Islamic
Oh, is that right?
religion as well. And I did not know that. I just found that out in my study here. I found that intriguing because he was so pivotal and so knowledgeable and made such an impact in his lifetime that they held him as a prophet as well. So, and here's someone else's our depiction of the wise men meeting at the house. Of course, any painter or artist is bound by his time and experience in life, and a lot of the old historic paintings are painted in Dutch costume clothing. So, I mean, the artist only knew what he knew at the time, and that's how this artist depicted the scene at the house. And if you think about that, they couldn't find a place at the inn to house themselves and give Mary a proper birthing. But after that time period, just a few weeks after they were registered, everybody else went home. So the housing became available. And that's why they found a house and they stayed a while until the flight to Egypt. So just kind of interesting. Okay, other scriptures. He counts the stars and calls them all by name. It would take an infinite mind to do that. None of us can do that, of course, but Psalm 147:4 states that. And the stars are telling the glory of God. They drank from the spiritual rock that followed them. It says, Paul wrote that in Corinthians, and this was about the Israelites as they were coming out of Egypt. And he said, and that rock that followed them was Christ. So it's not a jump for me, it's not a jump for me to think that a theophany happened in the essence of a star appearing and leading the wise men to the house where he was. And time-wise, we're talking anywhere from 4 months to 2 years. 2 years, yeah. Some because of the time reckoning. That's why Herod killed the boy children up to 2 years old. Any child by Jewish reckoning that was over a year old was reckoned as 2 years old, and that's why Herod went back and said, "Whoop, better make sure we get him," and went back 2 years. But Ezra's journey from Babylon to Jerusalem was 4 months by the Fertile Crescent. Now, maybe a smaller entourage like we expect happened here could have done it quicker, and it may have been quicker. But Ezra had all the relics of the temple and had probably elderly folks and children, and they had to take it a bit slower. So, again, out of Isaiah comes, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." And it says, "And they went their way, and look, the star which they saw in the east went before them until it came and stood over where the young child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And they came to the house and saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshiped him." Should we not also rejoice when we think about this? Should we not also worship him? And you can see here, and I'm getting done early. The season is superseded only by the season around Passover and Resurrection. I hesitate to say Easter anymore. I just don't like that word because it's a word that is taken from pagan religions. Resurrection is a much better one. Okay, we talked about the meanings of the gifts. Gold for his royalty. What was the second one? What was it about? Anybody remember? Incense, frankincense. So that was used in the formula, like you saw in the video, to create aromas in the temple that were to rise up to God, indicative of the prayers of the saints. So, and then the last one, myrrh, sort of muddying the waters here of the joy, but there was even then a foretelling or a foreboding of a death, of a sacrifice. And of course, we know the story. Pardon me? And embalming fluid, yes, yes. These are just some extra slides that I had mentioned already and maybe not elaborated upon as much, but if pagans saw Messiah coming, where were the Jews? Were they asleep at the switch? And why? Why did they not see the star? Why did they not know? Of course, when they said, well, where is Christ to be born? Then they said, of course, in Bethlehem of Judah.
They might have saw the star, but just not put two and two together.
That's true. But why? Yes.
I'm just thinking about current life as itself, we know the prophecies, we know what to look for in that, but a lot of people just go to day-to-day life and just don't give a care about it, it's like life just sets in, and it's like not being attentive to and being in tune with what
Yeah.
God is speaking.
Yeah. I know there's a flurry of activity out there right now, quote unquote modern day prophets saying different things. I know some of you have been listening and watching and telling me about them, and I'm not sure about those. I don't know, but we all need and choose different things to get us through each day, do we not? We do. Sometimes it's coffee, sometimes it's cigarettes, sometimes it's the exhilaration of exercise, sometimes, what else can it be? What gets you through the day? What do you choose to get you through the day? Maybe it's something I haven't mentioned. Prayer? Okay, Jackie, that's a good one. Anybody else? What gets you through each day? We all have things that we need to give us hope. Do we not? All different things based on our personalities and places in life. But the effort of the wise men is a testament to the desire to worship. Whether somebody?
I was to say goals.
Goals?
So setting goals for each day.
Yeah. To-do list.
Yeah.
I do a lot of to-do lists. Sometimes I don't get them done, but I know what I should do. Let's put it that way. Oh, I guess that's the beginning again. So we're done there. So any other thoughts, comments, questions that I'll try to answer on about the wise men? You learned some new things? Some things you didn't consider before? Going?
It's so cool to me that the wise men knew to get out of Dodge before, when Herod was telling them, I want to know where that kid is. Just think, the enemy's always been trying to kill the boys.
Yep.
And same thing with Moses, he kept him safe, and I'm just thinking there was a little boy king that somebody was smart enough to hide, and the enemy's always going after the boys. And I was thinking, even God, when the conquest into the promised land, I can remember a scene, he said, all the boys have to die, but if there's and the women too, only the virgins trying to be a girl, I guess.
Well, from the story in Matthew, how did the wise men know not to go back to Herod? Do you remember? What does it say?
A dream, they were born.
They were warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, and they went home another way. I don't. Yeah. I mean that's another thought, and another thought that has, I guess, come across my mind was: were they all in Babylon? The three, were they watching and discussing, or were they from their respective countries and converged en route? We don't know. We just don't know. I'm thinking that probably they were all advisors to the king in Persia, in Babylon. And they were studying this thing, and they said, wait a minute, there it is. And they put pieces of the puzzle together and said, we've got to go. We've got to go. So very, very interesting. Other thoughts, comments, questions? We are all here. I've said this before. We choose to be here on Sundays because we've chosen this as truth and something to live for, hope for, believe in. Is that not true? So it behooves us to study out and to get more proficient in our knowledge and our serve, so that we can better live this life and have something to hope for and believe in, and a destination to go to. So that's about all I have, unless you have other discussion questions. So we're